Welcome back to West Texas View.
And they'd want to know that. Welcome back to the West Texas View. I'm Johnny Lou Avery, and Karen Whittemire is the author of a brand new book that's just hit your bookstores on June the 1st called A Tailor-Made Bride, which is a historical romance in the Christian bookstore type.
Right.
And one of the things that I want to know is what makes a Christian fiction different from other kinds of fiction. What makes a Christian fiction Christian?
Right. There's two big things that I think make a Christian novel separate from just your regular novel. First, it's very clean. We don't want anything that's going to be offensive to anyone, so there's no foul language. You won't find any bedroom scenes. There's nothing that someone would find objectionable. So it's very clean material. That's very important. But the second thing, and what I think is probably really the key, is that there's a spiritual thread that runs through the story. My characters are characters of faith, and that faith leads them to make certain choices and decisions, and they learn a lot on their journey through the story. They also grow closer to God spiritually, so that's part of it as well. We're really careful not to make anything preachy. We don't want it to come across as we're Bible thumping you on the head or something. It's a characterization that these are Christian people living their lives, and this is how it looks for them.
Are spiritual people,
right?
And that's. And one of the scenes in this book that I thought was so interesting was her going to church. And there was only one church, and it was in the schoolhouse. Of course, this is the 1880s, and it was in the schoolhouse, and it never said anything about whether it was Catholic or Protestant or what it was.
Right.
But it did talk about the singing, and it talked a little bit about the preaching. And so it was just, just what you can picture in your mind as being a real...
Well, and a lot of times back in that day, they didn't have more than one church. In fact, sometimes they didn't have a church at all. They would meet under a tree or something like that.
And the traveling minister might be Methodist or Baptist or whatever, but they came through and everybody enjoyed them.
Right.
But and that was one. I'm a historical buff too, and so I love the things that made me feel like it was really authentic and true to your research. And one of the things that when we're talking about doing a book like this, you do have to have a certain amount of research, because not only are you researching the setting, which you said your setting in this book was done on the town of Clifton, but you called it Coventry.
Right, I made it fictional so I'd have a little more license, but I tried to take a lot of the research from the founding of that town and how it grew.
And then the other research is things that they used and did. You even talked about the sewing machine that she had, and my grandmother
the old treadle sewing machine,
had a machine like that. So all of that was really interesting to me. But then also, I want you to talk a little bit. Had you ever considered self-publishing?
I know a lot of people who have gone the self-publishing route, and there's pluses and minuses both ways. I really wanted to go with a traditional publisher because my personality, I am not a marketer. I'm not one of those outgoing people that just knows everybody and can get out there. So that really scared me. So I knew I wanted to go with a traditional publisher because they have the distribution channels to get your book into all the bookstores. I can't do that by myself, and that's one of the challenges that people who self-publish face is, how do I get my book where people are actually going to find it and buy it? Some bookstores are open to local authors. They'll carry their books, but you still have to get customers to pick them up and buy them.
Now, which goes along a lot with designing a cover. And, and you would have to have some kind of artistic ability.
And I have none, so I am so thankful that I had this Bethany House Publishing was able to use their art department to make me a great cover.
And so then if they self-published, though, how do they go about finding somebody that prints it?
Well, there's a lot of companies out there that you can get. It's kind of a growing market is for people that are wanting to self-publish, and there's a lot of different companies out there, but you have to be careful because some will just take your money and they'll end up giving you a product that's kind of substandard and no one's going to want to buy it. So you have to be really careful, research well, because there's better companies than others that are out there. But you also have to realize that going into this, you have to have a way to market it once you have a product. So if you already have a speaking ministry, if you go around and you speak at schools or you speak at churches or different functions, and you have people that are interested in your topic and they keep saying, you should write a book. I'd love to have that information all written down for me. That might be a great route for you to go. But if you are kind of like me and you like to just make up stories in your little hole while you're typing on your computer and you don't really like to get out and try to push your book, it's going to be really hard for you to make it with a self-published book.
And the other thing about a self-published book is usually you have to put a lot of money up front to pay for the printing, whereas you had it printed and
they
distributed.
paid me, which was much nicer.
So you definitely would recommend that. But I hear constantly people saying, I ought to write a book about that, or somebody saying to them, you should write a book. And I know a lot of people now have really gotten into writing family histories.
Sure.
And so those kinds of things might be the kinds
those
that
would be a great thing to do, for self-published. If you're just wanting it for your family, maybe as a gift or something like that, that might be a good option to look into.
But for something like this, you were very fortunate. But you did all of the homework. You said, what do I need to do first? The first thing I need to do is to get into a nest of professionals. So you started going to the conferences.
Right.
And therefore you met people that could help you and point you in the right direction and give you ideas and suggestions. And when you were sitting around that table with that editor for the first time, and people were asking questions, and you didn't want to say, wow, I'm at a table with the editor, and you didn't want to, but you listened to what they were saying and then piggybacked on that information.
That's right. We had one brave person at that table that said, can we send you our proposals? I wasn't brave enough to ask that. But if she hadn't asked that, I wouldn't have had my proposals sent in, and
you wouldn't have
probably wouldn't be here.
Published. That's true. Well, what else? What would be kind of a closing comment that you would like to make to anybody who feels a real interest in writing?
If you really want to pursue writing as a career or as something that you want to earn money with, really take the time to learn the craft. Read a lot in whatever, like if you want to write fiction, read your genre so you know what is selling in your genre. If you like mysteries, read mysteries so that you know what kind of stories are selling. Really perfect your craft. Read books, take classes, learn how to become a fiction writer, because it's a lot different than nonfiction and fiction are two completely different things. You have to learn how to create word pictures, ways that evoke emotions in your readers. There's a lot of things to learn. So perfect the craft, then get involved in those professional industries that will help you to network and make those connections that you need on the professional level, and then pray a lot and hope that you get a contract.
Well, in closing, one of the comments that you made was that you had a lot of a prayer behind you, but you also wrote a lot of short things, magazine articles and short stories and things before that, and so that was another way for you to
build your bio, right? Get some experience.
Well, I hope you've enjoyed this as much as I have. It's been such a pleasure for me to have to meet Karen Whittemire and to read her book, and I can tell you it was just one of the most enjoyable afternoons. I read this in about probably about 4 or 5 hours, and it just was a fun time. So we will maybe ask her to come on when her second book is published. But in the meantime, call me or email her if you've got any kinds of questions that you have. We'll see you next Sunday with another program.
Thanks for joining us for News West 9's West Texas View with Johnny Lou Avery. This has been a public affairs presentation of KWAB-TV and KWES-TV.